Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Alright, so things are getting crazy. Once again, blah blah blah, the Trump indictment, yada yada yada. It's all a frickin' psyop. That's what it is. It's a distraction. It's meant to steer eyes away from the actual important things that are happening. Look over here, all you ignorant leftoids, all you totally clueless, uninformed voters. Ma espionage, ma Trump indictment. Meanwhile, it turns out that the current president of the United States is currently embroiled in a massive corruption scandal involving multiple foreign countries, and apparently we're now learning, based on credible information from the FBI itself, that there are 17 audio recordings of Joe Biden and a foreign national discussing corrupt business dealings involving Ukraine, Burisma, the alleged $5 million bribery payment. In other words, pretty much the biggest scandal of my lifetime with supposed actual evidence whistleblowers, well, let's just call it piling evidence. And we're supposed to be focusing on the nonsense Trump indictment, the distraction, the psyop. How can I say this politely? F off. Here's the real scandal. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so some absolutely big news. We've covered every element of this story so far. The House Oversight Committee had that private meeting with the FBI, and supposedly, according to what Chuck Grassley is saying, they read the whole unredacted version of the document that they've been fighting so hard to see, the infamous FD 1023 form.
Heroic whistleblowers to continue to fight for transparency in this matter and make this document public without unnecessary redactions. And I want everybody to remember that I have read the unredacted version, except for a couple or three half-inch redactions, I'd say. Thank you very much.
Chuck Grassley claims that he saw the whole document. That was pretty big, but it pales in comparison to this. Just take a look.
Let me assist for the purposes of more transparency on this subject. The 1023 produced to the House committees redacted reference that the foreign national who allegedly bribed Joe and Hunter Biden allegedly has audio recordings of his conversation with them. 17 such recordings. According to the 1023, the foreign national possesses 15 audio recordings of phone calls between him and Hunter Biden. According to the 1023, the foreign national possesses 2 audio recordings of phone calls between him and then Vice President Joe Biden. These recordings were allegedly kept as a sort of insurance policy for the foreign national in case that he got into a tight spot. The 1023 also indicates that then Vice President Joe Biden may have been involved in Burisma employing Hunter Biden. Based on the facts known to the Congress and the public, it's clear that the Justice Department, the FBI, haven't nearly had the same laser focus on the Biden family. Special Counsel Jack Smith has used a recording against former President Trump. Well, what is U.S. Attorney Weiss doing with respect to these alleged Joe and Hunter Biden recordings that are apparently relevant to the high-stakes bribery scheme?
Alright, so no more playing games. After years of Joe Biden lying to the American people, claiming he has no knowledge, no involvement in any of his son's business dealings, we now know, based on a credible internal FBI document, that a foreign national, most likely from Ukraine, kept 17 audio recordings between himself, Hunter Biden, and Joe Biden discussing a bribery scheme and supposedly putting together the deal that landed Hunter Biden in that lucrative $80,000+ a month gig, sitting on the board of Burisma. Joe says he had no idea. His son just got the job based on his own merits. Maybe he used my last name, but hey, Hunter's the smartest guy I know. I had nothing to do with it. That's pretty much much the narrative that Joe Biden wants you to believe. Well, obviously that isn't the case, not even close, and Tony Bobulinski tried to make that fact clear. Well, if that wasn't convincing enough, well, this certainly should be. You know, you don't just audio record your conversations to protect yourself when you're doing something perfectly normal and legal. No, that's something you do when you're involved in a criminal enterprise and you need to protect yourself from possible prosecution. You need to have evidence to go after the other guy, or in this case, the big guy, to help get yourself leniency when facing judgment, or possibly and hopefully, best case scenario, immunity. And that's exactly what it was, a quote, insurance policy. Blah, blah, blah. The Donald Trump indictment. The Donald Trump indictment. He's guilty of holding in possession his own personal documents from his own presidency. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is apparently recorded on tape discussing illegal criminal bribery schemes, discussing putting his son on a board to make nearly $1 million a year, not to mention the $5 million kickback, not to mention how they affected policy in Ukraine and sent taxpayer dollars, which then most likely enriched them on the back end, not to mention admitting publicly to a live audience that he essentially blackmailed the Ukrainians to fire a prosecutor who was investigating his son, who was then replaced by a hand-picked prosecutor who had a history of corruption and then was arrested not too long after. I'm going to say the same thing that I always say. How much more is it going to take? How much more? Now, of course, we don't have the actual recordings themselves, but we have a legitimate FBI confidant confirming that they exist and pointing the finger directly at Joe, and that piles on to everything else. You know what time it is? It's time to confirm the identity of that foreign national. It's time to put him into a witness protection program, and it's time to get a hold of every single one of those recordings. We're not talking about something small here. We're talking about the President of the United States possibly being a compromised asset. We're talking about the President of the United States as then Vice President of the United States selling his office to foreign bidders. There is enough evidence to launch a special counsel investigation. Frankly, we might even be getting to the point where there's enough evidence to actually indict this guy, but certainly to impeach him. How much more can this guy get away with? And keep in mind, it's not even the first audio recordings. We have that infamous audio recording between Joe Biden and then Ukrainian president right before Volodymyr Zelensky assumed power in the nation, and right before Donald Trump stepped in as president of the United States after Inauguration Day, where Joe Biden was colluding behind the scenes with the Ukrainian president to essentially undermine Donald Trump's foreign policy. We have the infamous recording between Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden discussing the allegations and various investigations into Hunter Biden, where Joe Biden says, and I quote, "I think you're in the clear." You know, at some point, circumstantial evidence, when it piles up to this extent, becomes, I'd say, more than circumstantial, to use the infamous Adam Schiff quote. Oh, and keep in mind, you know, just a little thing. On top of the circumstantial evidence, we have multiple whistleblowers and multiple business associates who are willing to testify and are pointing the finger directly at Sleepy Joe, Tony Bobulinski, of course, being the most credible one. You know, let's compare the PSYOP to the actual corruption scandal that nobody seems to be worried about or talking about in this Donald Trump indictment, this supposed act of espionage. Are there any witnesses who are pointing the finger at Donald Trump for betraying the nation, being a traitor to the nation, mishandling documents and giving them to the Russians? No. But there are many people pointing the finger directly at Joe, with evidence, with transactions, with emails, and now with audio recordings, pointing the finger directly at the big guy as being involved in multiple corrupt criminal bribery schemes while in office. F the impeachment. This guy belongs in federal prison. And that's not a hyperbolic statement. That's not an exaggeration. The President of the United States is a criminal. Just some extra news on top. James Comer just issued a subpoena targeting Devin Archer, Hunter Biden's main business associate or business colleague. Obviously, this investigation is ramping up. There needs to be pressure right now to get a hand on those audio recordings. It's time to blow the lid on the Biden crime family. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Of course, you know that we would love to have you here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.